спокойной конкуренции, спокойного развития. Может ли Россия начать поставлять свои, в том числе софтверные и IT-решения? Может ли она в консорциуме с компаниями, ну вот в качестве некого рабочего предположения из БРИКС и ШОС создавать такие решения и предлагать?
Can we work with different ideas and how utopian and realistic this idea is, and if we can become a global player in the market and going from the market, cooperating with the market and with the countries that are more advanced than us. And these are key topics that we'll cover today at our session. The session will last 1 hour and a half. Besides the people who are here on stage, we have a number of experts that we also discuss those topics. And I would like to start our session with our first speaker, Minister of Telecommunication and Mass Media, Nikolai Nikiforov. And the first speaker, is it possible to go there to the stand and to have my presentation at the stand? Maybe we just switch like that. Colleagues, I hope here this system will work. If it's possible, just give me the remote that'll work with this. So please, I would like briefly in 7-10 minutes just characterize the situation that we have not only in the Russian market but also in the market, in the international market of IT systems that has to do with the monopoly of one of the countries and several companies that represent the country. So these are the numbers that represent, and they're based on the open data that we collected from the open sources. This is the niche of mobile applications and operation systems. So we can see Google Android, 79% of the product, Apple iOS, also 15%, Microsoft Windows, 3% of the market. Russia, in the Russian market, we have different numbers, but the ratio is almost the same. I'm not going to read through all the products. I just talk about the niche that where we see this domination. Operation system for computers, OS for servers, virtualization systems that became an integral part of our life and is an addition to the server OSs. And now we're talking about more applicable solutions. This is the enterprise management system, and we actually have something to brag about, and this is the solution of a 1S company in our country. And we can say that the share of the market is about 29–30%. It's also, if you look at it in monies, then the share is much bigger because our product is much cheaper than foreign and analogs. We can see S&P's share. And also database, it's also a very important component of all information systems, and none of the systems can work without it. And also project systems, we also have quite serious player from Russia. It's Askon company. It's 20% of the Russian market. And also office applications. You also see a total domination of products from one respected country. And we did this
продуктов из одной из стран на конкретных нишах. Видим, какую долю эти продукты занимают по целому ряду видов программных продуктов. Наверное, можно провести отдельную дискуссию о тех причинах, и в том числе комплексе мер государственной поддержки и стимулирования спроса, которые вызвали такую конфигурацию мирового рынка. Но сегодня одна из наших задач в том числе задуматься над негативными последствиями такого дисбаланса. Ведь монополия всегда приводит к негативным последствиям. Российская
consequence, and Russian Federation encountered this negative consequence as the manipulation of information technologies as a part of political sanctions when we talk not about business, not about development, we're talking about damaging economy of the country because of certain political situation. And we also are witnessing a global information situation. We are aware of unsanctioned access of special forces to IT systems of other countries. And actually that became possible because of the monopolization of the market, when a special force of one country was able to impose a certain decision on some vendors. And there's a very high temptation to actually use this situation. If the picture of global IT system looked differently, then we wouldn't have this situation of uncontrolled access to data of many users in the internet. Roughly speaking, you won't be able to agree with tens of thousands of companies in tens of countries. So now it's everything is in one hand. So what Russia can do in order to support our competitive producers, manufacturers, I particularly emphasize on the software, but also we need to cover telecommunication equipment and so on and so forth. First, it's soft regulation, legal regulation, and together with the state procurement law. I also against this direct prohibitive norms that prohibit Russian clients are prohibited from buying foreign products. There should be measures of administrative support, and as soon as we write these barriers in the law, we'll get this boomerang effect, and we'll get it towards other countries, and our products will be prohibited in other countries. Today we had a meeting with the representatives of Russian IT industry, and we're talking about the prohibition to buy Kaspersky antivirus in Chinese state sector. We are now discussing this situation with our colleagues, and we'll find many more examples like that. And again, this is going to be language of a two-way sanctions, and we don't want Chinese companies to encounter anything like that. Those companies that come to the Russian market replacing our Western colleagues that objectively see quite a big drop in demand for their products. So we would like to go from sanctions to the measures to support our providers. As you know, that Minister of Mass Communication is actually actively promotes a fund of universal software that will help us to subsidize leading Russian manufacturers to create those products that we don't have in the market yet, in order for them to take over the niche in the market and to be oriented on the markets outside of Russia. And we're talking about the international markets. We first have to evaluate our manufacturing capabilities, capacity. Here you can see the number of manufacturers of software in different countries, and you can see that in Russia, talking about software engineers, we don't have a lot of capacity, and if even we'll calculate the share of them per capita, it's even less. There is a number of measures, soft measures that we can use and is used by the state. We are broadening the state-subsidized jobs for universities and technoparks and so on and so forth. We also have to look at our budgets and to see what we have in terms of research and development here. And you can compare Russian companies' R&D budgets, and now we can see what opportunities can bring together Shanghai Cooperation Organization and the countries of BRICS to come together and to stay in one line in order to remove this disbalance on the IT arena. We think that it is necessary to define a specialization. Traditionally, Russian Federation was very strong in the internet companies developing different software. Our Chinese partners are very strong in developing a line of devices. India in offshore programming, and Brazil in the free software. And starting in 2015, the Russian Federation will take the leadership in the BRICS bloc, and in Ufa city will have the meeting of the heads of the state of our countries. And I think that this issue will become the key in the agenda. We are preparing the meeting of ministers who are responsible for information technologies, and we think that for Russian IT industry, it's a great opportunity to formulate their position and our ambitious plan for the next 5, maybe 10 years in the context of global market, but not in the context of creating the demand in Russian market, particularly in the Russian state sector. I think it's a unique opportunity for us to think about the destiny of all IT industry in the world and to make actually precise steps to multipolar rather than one polar IT landscape on our planet. I think that all the conditions we have, and at this point there are very decisive and very direct measures. I think that without the state support as a form of subsidy, we won't be able actually to make this leap. And I will be very grateful to your opinions, to your ideas on this particular matter. Thank you very much. Nikolai, thank you very much. Despite the very difficult acoustics, you actually delivered the key aspects in the area of concept to creating a multipolar world in the IT industry. Since we have quite a strict agenda here, I would like to offer all speakers to join us, and according to our agenda, to start your presentations. First, representative is Insfur from China. Is a very strong and multifunctional integrator and producer of IT solutions in China. Very interesting. It will be very interesting to listen to you, to learn about your experience and see how strong you are, how quickly you were developing, how you were expanding to the international market. And it would be great to hear some recommendations from you, how business and state can work together to build such solutions. Huanggang, please come. And again, I would like to warn you that will be a consecutive translation. Excuse me, I can't speak Russian. Mr. Minister Nikiforov and dear friends, in August of this year, Minister Nikiforov visited China and was supporting the collaboration of the two countries. During his visit, he also visited the ceremony of signing a treaty of strategic collaboration between the Russian and Chinese companies. And talking with the leading Chinese vendor, we were talking about the on the cloud computing. After all these changes in the world, it's very important to look at the security and informatization. Our experience showed us that you can't really ensure this basing only on the technology and devices of one country. China and Russia, we're strengthening cooperation in the area of IT and creating a working group to assure security of information. We hope that we'll be able to make our contribution into Russian and Chinese collaboration. Firstly, to cooperate in the area of servers 86. Two key mainframes that work on their own. It's the 5th in the world and on the platform Unix. And we are ready to do a technical exchange with Russian manufacturers in the industry, and together develop the domestic applicable platform. Servers x86 is in the 5 top in the world rating, and I'd like to find a partner in Russia to create local centers to produce those servers and to make a Russian local brand of such servers, so that server had a high trademark. And the second is to cooperate in the cloud computing. Development of cloud computing in the world is inevitable tendency, and right now we have more than 30 centers of cloud computing on the global market, and we accumulated a very large experience.
And in Russian, good energy but cold climate, and in this case that would be a very good cluster for development cloud computing. We could set up a very good network and to develop even further our cloud computers with cooperation of China and other countries. And thirdly, it would be nice to support computer industry in Russia. We needed to promote IT technologies even further. In this vein, our company has already made and is continuing to bring its own contribution to the internet development. And we have come up with a special server called Smart Rack for the internet industry. The Innsbruck company has supplied more than 50% of servers for the Alibaba company. one of the main advantages is low power consumption, fast delivery. Yes, this is the main advantages, and we do hope that in future we'll manage to cooperate. Fourthly is creation of the so-called supercomputers. Some Russian companies have already ranked as one of the top leaders in the world, and together with China we could do a lot and to reach even higher positions. Being one of the most successful computer supplier in China, the company participated in the construction of the so-called Terha-Kenga supercomputer that was ranked the best and dubbed the best computer in the world. And it has already been nominated the winner 3 times. INSPRA hopes to cooperate with corresponding research and development institutions and IT companies in Russia and make even more progress in this direction. In this sense, this forum of innovations, open innovations, will serve us as a very good platform for exchange of opinions, knowledge, experience. Here we have representatives from all over the world, and I hope that together we will be able to promote our products and technologies. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, I suggest that we should proceed to the main part of our session, namely Russian companies, representatives of the Russian IT sector, and I would like to give the floor to Andrey Sviridenko, founder of the Spirit company. Nikolai has already covered some issues in his presentation, and it was really nice to find something out about Chinese experience. Could you somehow comment on this idea of multipolar world? What could government do to help us advance in this position? And is it really possible to create this multipolar world? Good afternoon, dear colleagues. The Spirit company is now 20 years old, and initially we plan to set up an international company. We have more than 1 billion users in 100 countries. We have a great number of partners. We cooperate with big companies. We, as a Russian vendor, planned to set up a company that could help our users in their daily life, and of course we have always been willing to provide all the necessary assistance. As has just been mentioned, the software market has been monopolized, and some projects have already been mentioned in the framework of this session, like database applications and other solutions, but there is one more sector that has also been monopolized, means communication, because mass communication, they are now in a state of transition, and more and more people use internet and use it as a source of communication. Some American monopolies have very, very popular products. For example, Microsoft has Skype link. Google, apart from Android, has Android. Cisco has, which is now the leader in the sphere of communications. So this company has WebEx. Apple has FaceTime, and Facebook has WhatsApp, and we all know that Messenger is an extremely popular product, and almost all the leading manufacturers have billions of users, and those and this number is growing day by day. Apart, they add some even more interesting tools like voice messages, video chats, and etc. And this way they oust the already existing players on the market, and especially conventional means of communication. This is a very fundamental change that we are now have to make face to, and we are actively involved in this process. 10 years ago, we provided assistance to such companies as Skylabor in the effort to conduct a revolution. Today we are cooperating with different operators in many different countries all over the world, helping them to meet the challenges of today's life. We have been present in China for 10 years. Actually, initially we were more Asia-oriented, and our first office was opened in 1994 in Tokyo. And in China, we have always cooperated with large-scale companies, suppliers of communication equipment. Some of our partners are Huawei, ZTE, HTC, Quanta. Everyone knows these brands. They are leaders. They are the leading suppliers of communication equipment. It's also worth mentioning that we also cooperate with China Mobile. Together we worked on iMessenger. Apart from that, we also cooperate with some state organizations in order to, for example, to make such companies as China, for example, less dependent on American technologies, and probably use more GLONASS and other solutions. Because we know that America has actively been promoting their vendors, and they became extremely popular all over the world. And for example, even some instructions were given not to buy Huawei, and in this sense, this company had real trouble find users and consumers. That is why I should say that Russia could be of great help and could bring a lot to the table. We also cooperated with an Indian company, Sky Reliance. The company started its business from scratch. We hope that in Russia we can get some real support from the government, and that the government could promote Russian products and solutions. State-owned companies account for the biggest share of the market, and if this company start buying products of Russian origin, then we will help a lot. will help our manufacturer a lot. It will be a real boost to their growth. Of course, there is always room for improvement, and such kind of actions could help them to expand, to improve, to increase the level of quality. Judging from my own experience, I should say that it was more difficult to buy something to Rosnanotechnology rather than Indian, Chinese, or other companies. And we hope that the situation will change. What is needed for that? Well, it takes political will to change the situation. It takes proper industrial policy. We are ready to provide our assistance and all the necessary support to move further. Thank you very much, and I would like to give the floor to Igor Boychenko, General Director of the Relex group of company. Igor, do you agree with the previous speaker? What could you add? Could you comment somehow on what has just been said? Again, you have only 5 minutes. Thank you very much. I will try to be as brief as possible and to answer the main 3 issues on the agenda. When we talk about such things as evolution and possibility to use some competitive products and local or Russian IT companies, what comes to my mind is data management systems. We are represented it's in this sector. It's our field of expertise, and we have been in for more than 10 years, so we have gained enough experience to come up with our own recipes, and we work both in Russia and abroad. I think that such an idea as national independence is absolutely impossible unless you have your own institution, unless you conduct your own R&D works, for example, operating system and software solutions. It should not be limited to figures, to tables, because the paradigm has changed tremendously, and this is the very direction that we are working in. We have already gained certain experience, and we have already tried to imitate and to clone some Western platforms and models. Yes, we have had such experience, but this is not a way to go, because it never led to any fruitful results, and because actually we had nothing to display at the international exhibitions. For example, Maxim, I have already mentioned that example, not the very brightest example. This just proves once again that we are fallen victims of other solutions. It's like when you try to imitate other people's speech. It will not anyhow help the Russian market. It means that we should take advantage of what we already have and invest it in R&D works. We should invest even more in this very sector. Of course, we will still be using some solutions that have been developed by our Western colleagues, but this will be just a preliminary solution, because we need to come up with our own ideas. We know that initially we didn't have very considerable investment. Still, we had a very talented group of people, and we managed to create a very efficient product, popular both in Russia and America. Again, it is based on theories, on R&D works in IT sphere. So we generated our idea using these very ideas. Of course, we also took a page from our competitors' book. So these three main components would be sufficient to successfully move forward and develop our technologies and assume one of the leading positions on the international market, because I think that we have all it takes to do that, and the main focus should be made on databases, because it's all about management, and we fully rely on data management. So that was three recipe advice from our colleague. I would like to get the director of the InfoWatch company also be involved in our discussion, Natalya Kasperskaya. I would like to take a more general stance on that. Speaking about substitutes, well, I think that we should segregate this issue in two parts. The first one, what we miss and what we already have. The first one is antivirus, different security systems. Well, I don't think we should do anything about this particular part. Probably think more about demand. That is exactly what our developers lack. We do understand that most state-owned companies still prefer American products rather than Brazilian or Chinese. And ever since Americans imposed the sanctions, they are in a real chaos. They are searching for other options, which is not very good. But they are not Russia-oriented, which is not good. What we miss? Well, there is always room for improvement, but we should take an integral approach to this issue. Speaking about software security, this is quite useless because no matter what kind of software, no matter of security we have, it is always cancelled out. But the missing things, we shouldn't forget about iron, about the structure itself, and in this sense we should come up with a kind of strategy or action plan. We need to take certain measures, maybe together with our allies, because if we start from scratch, well, it will take us years to come up with some software solutions, and still we will be lagging behind the international leaders. On the other hand, so again, iron itself plus soft, and we should take advantage of our alliances, and it's very great that we have so many Chinese specialists here, because they are real gurus. So what we should take? First of all, we should create a separate fund, though I should say that we shouldn't do that because we've got dozens of different funds.
We build a strategy and create funds, and those funds, they work on the strategy, and they invest not just for something, they invest only in the things that are described in the strategy, and we have enough monies in these 10 funds. A very important point that should be supported by the state and can be done only by the state is to create the ecosystem. Unfortunately, in the previous presentations, we didn't hear that, but it's useless to talk about development of software in some abstract situations. For example, we find 1,000 programmers, and like they came from India or from China. So we put them, we we set them down, and what they're going to write, what programs they're going to write. They're going to write nothing. And why? Because they have to have some scientific schools. They need to have students, grants, universities, the whole ecosystems. In some areas we have it, in some areas we don't. In operation system we don't have it. In the processes we completely lost it. We have to create it from zero, and it should be funded, it should be invested. Ecosystem is the most important part. It's clear that for 1-2 days we can do it, but the earlier we start, the sooner we start, the sooner we have it. And as soon as we have something, then immediately we need to support the demand. Again, is with the point one, because if we create this spherical horse in vacuum, this horse will be running in the wrong direction. We need a particular client. They will tell us what they don't like. They write it down, and then the vendors will come and they correct it. We need to understand what is competitiveness. And at the first stage, it's not going to be as competitive as we want. They're going to be less competitive than they should be, but naturally. But the only way to correct it is to work individually with each customer. And you, Minister, and the Ministry itself, we would like to ask you to help us in this matter. To help us to maybe impose it on us, or the companies with the state share, the government share, so that they will buy domestic products, so they will be pushing us, they'll be kicking us, and they will give us their requirements that we could create competitive software. It's from the point of view what to do. Now I would like to emphasize on very important points for 1 minute. Okay, I'll try to stay within the limit. So one of the myths is that talking about specialization and the vendors, unfortunately, in the areas where we don't have fundamental ideas, and we can only build on a free software basis, so that we can look at something, and then further on we can develop something from our own. We have good developments in narrow areas like military equipment and so on and so forth. Maybe something can come from there, but again, there should be strategy. And summing up the whole speech of mine, I would like to say that from the state we need to get not only just direct funding, and I think it's not going to be good, and even developers themselves will be ready to finance it themselves. And we as developers, we got together, and the domestic developers, they will be ready to work on this project and to invest in this project, and will bring their own ideas and solutions in this particular area from the state. What we need, the ecosystem should be created, and to form the ecosystem, and B is to make clients to use what they have as a result of it. So thank you, Natalya, that somehow uniquely you systematized everything that was said before you, and I think that the result of this talk of our national software producers, and would like to go to the second block of our discussion. This is the communication with the institutes of development, and would like to get the same question to them and to ask them how do they see this point and how this task should be resolved. And the first, I would like to ask Mr. Agamirzian from RVK to take the floor. Thank you very much. I'm kind of in an ambiguous situation here. On the one hand, first of all, everything that Natalya said, I pretty much agree with everything she said. And the most important thing is that everything should be systematized, and those things should be particularly emphasized on, and what should be supported by the state through stimulating the demand of those areas, of those Russian vendors that exist on the market, and they're competitive. It looks really like a joke when we have a high-class, world-class antivirus software, and the state organizations, they're buying software from the direct competitor from American market. And I think this regulation-wise can be done, legal-wise can be done. I agree that it's possible and should be done to use and to support by the state those things that we don't have. But in reality, I think it's a more complex process, and frankly speaking, it's more pessimistic. I take it more pessimistically, and I look at those prospects of cloning a so-called free software basis. I personally know 7 different of distribution packages of Linux that were done in Russia, and I think none of them is widely used. And as soon forked happened, then to support this, it is unplugged from the global community of vendors that actually have the intellectual resource, and to maintain it in the appropriate state, it's very resource-intensive work than the project itself. So therefore, here I don't have the feeling that experience of using universal software is actually positive. Our Chinese colleagues, they also tried to use it, and it also wasn't developing in a straight way, and they have more strict state regulation. Therefore, in some cases, the state can actually insist on their own idea, and we actually didn't do this. There is one fundamental issue, I think, that the thing is that the proposed measures, they're absolutely right and understood, and in the from the point of view of the political interests, state interests, in some way, in terms of security of the business, to be protected from potential threats. And they don't really have any economic point. Therefore, Natalya's point when she said that I can't agree with it's enough. Those funds we have, they're enough. First of all, they're not enough. Secondly, all development institutions in the Russian Federation, in one way or another, they work on the private-state partnership and attracting private investment to state money or to institution of development that were provided by the budget. And now this is a property of state-owned company. Firstly, this is it will give us a multiplying effect because the state money help to attract much more funds than the state money itself. And also, we can filter the quality of the project because the state official or an employee of a state company, they're not as qualified in the economy and business as private entrepreneur who is risking his own money. So therefore, I can say with a guarantee that such projects of project replacement, we can't really attract private investors. Therefore, the scheme of state-private partnership that is worked on the institution of development, so we won't have it working. And to do like state-state partnership, that is oftentimes happens, and when they mix money from the same pocket, so to speak, it's not a good way to do it. The strategy won't work, and therefore I absolutely agree that a fund, there should be a fund, and it should be formed, and we need to understand in advance that it won't be a fund for the market. And the question is how to form the fund and what dialogue with the business we have to have, because all the solutions we have and all I heard, they're not really convincing. Igor, thank you very much, and I would like to give the floor to Mr. Bortnik to support from the point of view of institutions of development and innovation regions, those points that were covered before you. Please express your opinion on that. We had a short talk before the session, and based on this, I really hope that you will give maybe a completely different view different from what all other speakers said, and in this case, this is the floor is yours. So I can't give you any new one and probably say something. I repeat myself or repeat my colleagues. So the topic of the discussion is the cooperation of Shanghai Cooperation Organization countries or BRICS countries is to retailor the map of the world, IT map of the world, and we naturally talking for business. So to start retailoring the map of the world in Russia first, start retailoring the card, how to work with software in Russia. So do it here in Russia instead of talking about what you use here, something non-Russian. So I would like to draw your attention to this particular point. And again, I would like to emphasize on this, how Nikolai stated the issue. We have a chance. You business, in this case, institutions of development, do you see opportunities? Is it really appropriate to state the question like this, you know, to have the second axis, so to speak, in this bipolar world as we speak? On the one hand, is there either potential enemies or potential friends? It's practically one country, or it's a new block of the countries, quickly developing countries, this Shanghai Organization countries and BRICS countries. So, and in this case, I can answer this question is Natalya, Kasperskaya, and we all are institutions of development, and we are expecting that this question will be stated this way. We are a state-owned structure, but we also are lacking one single strategy. I think that it's quite possible to state the issue like that, to create this axis, but it's an incredible, insurmountable amount of work, you know, to retailer in this particular case the IT map of the world. And it's an incredible cooperation between the state and the private companies, IT companies, to form, as they say, this roadmap. It's a very serious work with our partners, and thank God there are Chinese partners here and with other countries. So we need to agree on what we need to get from them, what we need to give to them. And Natalya said, so where we actually have real opportunities for cooperation. Our Chinese colleague was saying that what they saw, what useful they saw in terms of cooperation to work with this issue on the side of Russian organizations. So as the classical writer say, as Porter said, it's a cluster international cooperation and competitive at the same time, competitive players in one technological niche. This is a wild task to work with, and I think that we actually are capable of doing it. And in fact, our companies, without really wanting to insult Nikolai, so from any support from the state, we don't really feel this support from the state. They actually get to the international market, they work in the international market, and they accept it at the market, but the scale of this interaction is without the serious support from the state is not as it should be. And on the level of SIO organization and BRICS cooperation, it will stay just as little as it is now without the support we need. So therefore, as they say, you know, those ones will achieve who try. And so in this case, ministry is working on this together with our partners. It's a very complicated task, but I think that it can be solved, and we as institution of development, so one of them as a support fund, and we as an interested region, we know that something is done in Tatarstan and Novosibirsk and in Tomsk and many other regions, in Krasnoyarsk. So therefore, we in this regard will be, with great pleasure, will participate in working on this task. And we actually are expecting from you that you will state a task like that. Thank you, Nikolai. As you see it, we're going back to formulation of a strategic approach, and these companies say, so it would be much better if we had certain roadmap, certain strategy, how we should conquer this global world. And of course, producing this strategy and making the strategy, we need to play together with all the players. And so in one way or another, we were a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about this at the Sochi Forum, and it was resonating quite broadly. So I'd like to address this to Kirill Varlamov. He was also present at the Sochi Forum, and continue on this topic. So what else you can add, what you can recommend, or you can forecast? Thank you very much. In fact, I very much like how the question is stated in building the cultural alternative in the global scale. And I actually write it down here that I can show it to you what I've written down. So what actually was said, it's important to coordinate the effort, to synchronize the effort within Russia and at the level of BRICS and SCO organizations and countries. So we need to understand the desires of all the participants. We need to understand priorities and risks they have and understand the risks here. If we have risks of sanctions here, so what we need to provide, how to avoid those risks. And I agree with many speakers here that we're not only talking about software here, but we're also talking about server equipment, telecommunication equipment. We want to see a strategy. We want to see a precise plan, what we do, what we don't do. Here we act like this, here we act like that, and we account on our Chinese partners, Indian partners. And somebody gave this example here, developing the 32 processor server that what our colleagues present here. And somebody said there was a number of the line in a certain decree that was issued. And in fact, people were thinking about it, and they wrote it down here in a very particular place in the decree. So I would like to see that number 600 something, actually to understand the list of all those actions we have. So the fund of initiatives is a bit on the side in this context, but nevertheless, we support many projects in cloud computing and that have intercorporate segment, and we try to build the demand by understanding who needs what, just not to fund those projects that are not going to be interesting for our clients. So we want to see it precisely written down. So, and thank you very much. So the first part of talking to people who are in the panel, we are going smoothly to the second part. They're talking to the experts, since many experts wanted to say a few things about that, and not all of them fit in the first row, so maybe they'll come from the audience. We have only 25 minutes left, and during these 25 minutes we need to finalize all the proposals we wanted to discuss. In the first row, I would like to ask those who want to say something, please raise your hand, and I have a list of all of you, but nevertheless you'll have a microphone, so please stand up and introduce yourself.
Pavel Gudkov, let's start with you. Well, good afternoon. Hope everyone can hear me perfectly well. So a few comments with regard to what has just been said. Igor said that, yes, we need to come up with a strategy, with a plan, and Igor outlined some main targets. I think that we should segregate them in long-term targets and short-term targets, because absolutely, Natalya, agree with Natalya that we should help those with whom we have already established good relations. For example, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and BRICS means help to already existing partners. And another one that we should make most focus on is the so-called long-term ideas. For example, generics. It is supported not only in the framework of new drug development, but also in the sphere of security. Speaking about the forthcoming 3 or 5 years, I suggest that we should set up some funds, and I have been working in that direction for a good many years. We need to create favorable conditions. We need to support startup, define maybe 10 or 20 directions, prepare a list of startups, and in the long run we should come up with the 2 or 3 most efficient solutions that will be supported maybe by some private investment or by Africa, and at this very stage probably we should establish even more efficient cooperation with SCI. And of course, it would be nice to have a Russian legal entity. Speaking about our long-term prospects, I don't really want to go into more detail. I just want to say that we should work at all the levels. I mean, starting from schools, etc. So at every single level, because we need to find and to develop our own solutions rather than try to imitate our Western partners and use the already existing solutions. We should have some institutes involved, and as for import substitute, probably that could be not the best ever solution. And if you have a look at the market, well, I should say that it's great that we have created cooperation institute, but we do not have an institute that would lobby Russian development, and for example, Rosnano, it is taken as a state entity. Natalya said a few words about the main challenges, but our main problems go beyond that. We've got certain psychological problems and attitude to this very sector, and without going into more details, I just want to say that it would be nice to have an institute that would lobby some solutions and ideas in this field of expertise. Dmitry Bogachev, I represent this Kolkovo Park here, and coming back to our discussion in Sochi, I think that we should change our approach to institutes, to the way we train people, we teach people, because there is a whole variety of different institutes, but at the end of the day, we don't have experimented people. We have some clusters, and you could see some information about this on the very first slide. I think the problem is not that people are unable to create technologies, but the problem is that we cannot come up with a high level quality products. I think that almost 99% of the companies are really liking this thing. Companies, they simply don't have competitive products which could be taken as equivalents to the already existing products on the international scene. What should be done? Yes, we should search for new training methods. We should search for new solutions for support, and it will help us to create a global entity and a global company. We already use all the necessary tools for that. We all know the world's mentorship. And it's very nice to lobby some instrument, but if Mikhail calls a minister from China and says, okay, we have this kind of model, well, I don't think that this kind of action will lead to any fruitful results. But if we create a third mentorship panel in the framework of BRICS, and if in the framework of this cooperation we will be lobbying our companies, well, I think that could be an option for us. We need to develop this kind of mechanism to move forward. And please introduce yourself. Shakirov, IT company. I will be brief with my remarks. Just speaking about mentorship, I've been involved in a big number of different projects, and judging from my own experience, I should say that one of the main challenges here is related to the level of quality, both on behalf of those who provide services and on parts of the end users. We have some statistics which say that use of certain foreign software is only 12% effective. I have seen these figures. We are risking to have similar figures for our Russian software solutions. What we receive from our Western partners and other foreign companies, this is kind of precious information about development and implementation of different products. And thanks to that, we have already gained a certain experience. And it's very nice that the leaders and their senior managers, they are quite aware of that. And they know much about regulation, about the main principles. Still, we are lacking some experience. We need more institutes. We need best practices. We need more institutions which could address that kind of issues, so that we all can properly understand all the norms and standards in the framework of the project implementation. That is of crucial importance. And secondly, international cooperation. Yes, there are long-term and short-term prospects. And I think that the world is moving towards global integration and cooperation, and it since speaking about long-term prospects, that could hardly be a success, but we could develop some very good products which could serve as a retaliation to the sanctions imposed by our foreign companies. We could come up with our own structure of cooperation with suppliers, buyers, and users. So we need to clearly define our main breakthrough points, which could help us to increase our competitiveness, maybe cyber security, maybe some data-related products, and we already have what it takes to gain success in this very field of expertise, and we have very good specialists who could create high-level quality products. Krivosheyev Oleg, Rosatom, Russian Nuclear Center. In order to address this issue at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and BRICS, first we need to have competitive IT products. Do you have that kind of products? Well, we do, but as for its competitiveness, well, I don't know that that is competitive enough. What does it take to come up with a competitive product? We really need a very considerable breakthrough, which would allow us to get and to create this top quality products. If you have a look at the international IT market, for example, Huawei or Silicon Valley-based company like Google, more than 50% of this percent of their orders come from the energy sector and military sector, but it's not the case in Russia. What are the reasons to that? Well, there are two main reasons to that. The first reason is that IT technologies does not make part of the key industries list. And secondly, key programs of the energy, high-tech and military sector as of today have no long-term IT strategies that could serve as a basis for developers, which could be used as a basis for developing our standards and norms. Something that would help them to have a clear vision of all the orders and all the processes involved. Valentin Makarov, Rusoft. Well, my first remark, these words and term Hebrew substitute, I think that it's not enough to take it to make it to the top. Such initiatives were already taken 5-6 years ago, but if we're really willing to change IT roadmaps, I think that we could really do that, because we have approximately 400 companies who already export their software, and some of them have already made it to the top of the Gartner ratings. This is a real drive force, and together with India and China, we could really make it to the top. Another point is that as of today, we are hardly aware of this cooperation between Shanghai Cooperation Organization and BRICS, and the way it should be organized. Should we come up with some kind of operating system of quality management system? We should clearly define the main issues that we should work in. For example, the interfaces between two different industries, such as medicine, or health industry, and IT, how they should interact between each other. This is something that we should focus on. And speaking about sanctions, yes, Russia has been sanctioned, but who knows, maybe tomorrow India, China, or some other countries might also be sanctioned, and IT segment is really volatile, and it changes very unexpectedly and abruptly. But I think that no one should ever impose IT-related sanctions. Speaking about Russia, do we have enough funds to proceed with all this import substitute? Unfortunately, we do not have full access to Ministry for Trade, Ministry for Economic Development, and in this sense, I think that we should find a different solution. I don't think that we should change our taxation system. Instead of that, we should generate a brand new fund, but on the basis of the already existing funds. And the main, we should put particular stress and pay most part of our attention to our strength rather than weak points. So, and that would help us to come up with our own substitutes, our own model. But as for the existing blocks, I think that they would be sufficient to create our own funds, and I think that we should set our common goals jointly with our China's partners and partners from some other countries as well. So unfortunately we are short of time, and we have a speaker here from the China Mobile company with his own interpreter. Dear guests, I'm here to represent the Shanghai company. I have already visited Moscow 3 times, so it's my 3rd time in Moscow. I visited Moscow 10 years ago. It was in winter. I also visited Moscow 5 years ago. It was summer. And today it's autumn. And it's really nice that we are all in a good mood. And I can see some positive changes. I have prepared some information for you, and I also wanted to communicate some information from my friends. I would like to tell you a few things. The first one is Russia and China being once some of the most influential countries could find common language. And I think that we should come up with our own language rather than use the English language. Secondly, innovative technologies. We are really willing to find a Russian partner and jointly invest in common R&D works.
Probably in Russia there is a special standard, their own standard and the rule, and we can openly exchange our information and create different standards in different country. For example, recently our famous company Alibaba, it's trading on the stock exchange, and our colleagues from the States and Japan, they also participate in this. And For example, also representatives of Shanghai company. 3 years ago, this company, nobody knew this company, but now this company is very famous. Over the 2 years, this company has been developing very quickly, and it's much bigger than Apple right now in the Chinese market.
今投向这家公司，我想我们俄罗斯人也会从中受到很大的收益的。
And if a Russian market opens access to the market for this company, then for China and China, that will be a very good way to do things.
现在已经在建设当中，欧亚大陆桥已经在启动，从中国的连云港到德国的汉堡，这条欧亚大陆桥，我想我们应当予以高度重视。
Right now, the fourth point is we just open a bridge for a high-speed train from one city to another. And therefore, if it's possible to create a union, China, Russia, and Germany, they will have a very good prospect. Because we have cultural connections of China, Russia, and Germany. And the last point I would like to say that innovation at this point is to develop internet in Russia. We hope that the Russian market will pay attention to our company and will open access to the company and will think about cooperating with us in this particular area. Thank you for a heroic translation. And also I'd like to give the floor to Dmitry Dubrovsky, Center of Voice Technologies, and just 1 minute left, so please. It's very, so colleague, just a couple of words. I'm from the company that has to do with technology and the products, and it works abroad. We send a lot, we export a lot. What particular steps should be undertaken for us and for our colleagues on the side of Ministry of Mass Media? First of all, these are measures of support that has to do with subsidized loans, with help with double taxation and banking loans and so on, because we really feel unprotected working as experts if we compare our activities from China and our colleagues from China and from the US. And I would agree here with Natalya Kasperskaya. Without implementing it in Russia, it's very difficult to work abroad. For example, we work in such areas of voice biometrics, and now we're working with one of the American banks, and we have to run to the States because to do it. We have to keep all this R&D and engineers all in the States, so we create jobs in the States, because here there's no ecosystem for this. If, you know, these implementations could be done in Russia, we could run the test here in Russia and go there with a ready product. It would be much more effective and with a better success, you know. So those measures to create internal demand, especially for new products that in the world are not quite known, they just begin their life. Here, state companies, I think they could help us a lot, and maybe some KPI could be introduced here. And this issue that I raise every time, this is a complexity to work in the ecosystem here, and our Western partners, they created these ecosystems here, and we just begin to create those with Nauman, and we're not as strong as our Western colleagues, so it's very important that the state companies will help us to work with them. So I would say that we actually did a great job. We listened to all the opinions, all the points of views, and it would be great to finalize our session. There were lots of proposals, and I'm sure that Ministry of Communications and many participants here, you actually learned a lot of useful things, and we discussed with Nikolai. Here we put the kind of dotted line, so the discussion is not finished yet, and in any case, the functions from on both sides are clear. We again exchange opinions. Who didn't know each other, we would like to thank Chinese delegation for participating in this session, and so putting this dotted line that the future is coming, and we're going to this future, and we're developing our IT industry. Thank you very much, and have a good evening.